Good afternoon, distinguished panelists, distinguished members of IMA and my fellow from IMA and so is attending this program. As we know, the subject of this topic of this panel discussion, 1 hour panel discussion, is that the future of higher education, digital universities for tomorrow. Is a very apt subject, especially when Government of India in the current budget has announced that starting a digital university. This discussion, I'm sure that will have a lot of will have come out with some valuable suggestions for the academia as well as the universities and those who are stay connected with such type of initiatives. I have a privilege to chair this session, and with me, 3 distinguished panelists are there. I think they have been introduced. Should I introduce again, Mr. Rahul?
So I have been introduced.
Okay, thank you. So to set a context for this discussion, I thought I will just share some of my thought process. I'm sure that since morning, in fact since yesterday, a lot of deliberations already has taken place on the connected subjects. Digital university is okay, but connected subject. I was also trying to hear 1 or 2 conversation, and the previous speaker also is talking about something on the digitalization. So now to add the value to this panel, I thought let me set a brief context, which, as per my understanding, that like in this internet and digital age, globalization and democratization of education and learning opportunities are one of the I will say that the trend, the globalization and democratization of education industry and the learning industry. I will say, as we know that a very very strong learning industry is coming up globally. A new education industry has strongly emerged, and globally, digitalization in industry and globalization of the industry is pervasive now. So we are part of this this wave of digitalization as a academia or as a education. So we cannot be away from this. It's a part of this. And education sector is also with the development with the emergence of the edutech and that sign of digitalization is evident in last 4 or 5 years now. And and the pandemic has proved that what is the value of this digitalization. And in fact, during this last 2.5 years, with the help of digital channels and digital communications, a lot of benefits has come to this sector. There is a good scope of learning of digitalization in from other industries like retail and health. In fact, the education industry, as per the various surveys and statistics are available, is far behind of the digitalization in last 20 years. Last 20 years, whatever the reasons, I find that that the following opportunities for digital universities, and which should impact the model, which probably our panel is going to discuss today. One is that offering higher education opportunities for more number of citizens and learning seekers, learning seekers. As we see that since the digitalization is having no boundaries, network connectivity is available. Now, how the digital university, which is earlier universities are, unless you get admission, unless you are registered over there, you are not eligible to take the degrees and certificates, etc. But now, with the help of digitalization, how it is possible now to get access to that quality education by general citizens, those who are not in position to join the university physically. Best quality of education content, now is available. Leveraging platform economy. Platform economy, in my opinion, is also one of the very impactful and which is changing every industry. It's a great opportunity for our industry also, education industry also, how this industry will leverage the platform economy. Already we have platforms like Coursera, the MOOC platform, we call them sometimes the MOOC platform, they are, impacting the industry, but it's still, the widespread, utilization of, platform economic principles in the university per se. University per se is still to be seen in a big manner. Though there are some experiments and some of the universities started globally, like, there are some universities in Korea, South Korea. I am aware of that. They have done good experiments, like that. Then another important thing is that the digital university or this sort of concept should establish the wide collaboration and partnership among the stakeholders. Stakeholders may be the education stakeholders are education institutions, research bodies, research labs, and at large the industry and the government, which today we find little delimiting factor in this industry. So with this setting this context, I would like to invite the views of Dr. Robert. He's senior most panelist today among all of us, sir. That what is your view about the viability of the digital university, and how when we go for the digital university concept, and we like to compare with the digital industry or digital business kind of concept, how much it is viable and what are the barriers on this? You are on the mute, sir. Yeah.
Were you asking me to make some comments first? I'm sorry, I didn't hear who you were introducing. My apologies. First of all, let me just say, I did prepare a number of remarks, which perhaps provide something of a balanced perspective, I hope, regarding the conference theme as a whole. And here I want to talk about global disruption on the one hand, and the transformation of higher education on the other. Clearly, the implication is that disruptions, and let me use COVID as an example, can lead to transformative opportunities. And in taking this perspective, I don't by any means want to downplay the negative impacts, of course not. We know how devastating this has all been. But such disruptions, even ones such as devastating as COVID, can lead to positive outcomes. And I want to give you just a couple of examples from my experience. I hope this responds to your invitation. And I don't want either to downplay digitally delivered education. You've made the point. But let's think, if I may, if I can refer to the original digital university, the UK's Open University, if I may.
Yeah.
The truly outstanding work of the OU and its various sister institutions the world over can't, to my mind, be exaggerated. But I will, in these remarks, want to raise some issues concerning what may be seen as an over-reliance on digital delivery. Now, it shouldn't be forgotten in the current digital age that the OU has been providing distance learning education for over 50 years. That's an important, truly important service, providing open access to higher education on behalf of those who might otherwise not have had that opportunity to improve themselves and to make their mark on society. Now, the creation of the OU, in part at least, was thanks to the foresight of the likes of the British Prime Minister Harold Wilson and colleagues in government, together with BBC engineers. Now, foresight, that's something I want to emphasize. Let's recall, going back further in history, Wilson's speech way back in 1963, 60 years ago, where he called for the harnessing of what he termed the white heat of technology. But enough of history. What I wanted to say in these introductory remarks is, one, disruptions can bring about opportunity, but two, they can bring about threats as well as unforeseen and unintended consequences. Three, it requires leadership, foresight, as I just mentioned, and continued attention to achieve the positive. and to nullify the negative. And 4, such transformations may be occurring more frequently of late, but there are many, many examples from the past. So to bring us up to the present day, let me give a couple of uncomplicated, truly uncomplicated, but effective illustrations of the positive impacts of digital technologies are having, and that are clearly evident as a result of the astute efforts of giving my experience with EFMD accredited business schools, in ensuring not just the provision of programs, this is an important point, I think, provision of programs and courses, but their continued development. Close to home, I've witnessed the considerable efforts being exerted by a number of UK business schools in ensuring the continued learning, but also the well-being, this is another important point, of students during COVID. The latter point, I'll come back to that later on. I've witnessed countless Zoom, Teams meetings at which various modes and means of course delivery have been debated. Of course, long gone are the unthinking 2-hour lectures with little or no interaction with the students that may have been something of the norm with face-to-face delivery in the past. More focused sessions are now apparent. Learning rather than teaching is the norm, an absolute requirement in the virtual world, in my view. Often sessions reinforced by virtual group work. So students are getting used to working in virtual groups, applying knowledge to real world cases and phenomena more broadly. Now, accreditation agencies like EFMD and AACSB are concerned about intended learning outcomes, ILOs, or assurance of learning, ensuring that individual courses achieve their stated objectives while contributing to the program's mission and intent overall. An emergent outcome of these virtual discussions has often been a renewed focus on the appropriateness and achievement of ILOs. So that's another benefit. The reflection has also resulted in a renewed interest in and understanding of the impact of digital technologies in various aspects of business and management. The very content of courses has changed as a result. While many of us in the information systems discipline have been attempting to raise awareness of IT and its impacts on organizations and society for decades, indeed, there's been increased digital content in marketing, accounting, finance management courses and programs in recent times. I think it's reasonable to conclude that the trend has been accelerating of late, given the heightened awareness of our dependence on the technology. With this in mind, we might rethink the very definition of a digital university. I'd like to put this point into the debate. In other words, it's not just a digital university is not just about the delivery mechanisms, but also the digital content of programs. Another facet of what it means to be a digital university, in other words. So time's short, so let me just give one more example, or simple example, of opportunities that have arisen from COVID and in the enforced use of digital technologies. Situated in South America, a certain business school seeking EFMD program accreditation had issues arising from its limited resources and EFMD's insistence, rightful insistence, that schools need to provide an international learning experience for their students. Landlocked and under strict lockdown due to the virus, how on earth was this going to be achieved? Course content could, of course, include more international cases and considerations, but the student mix was restricted to nationals for the most part anyway, as was faculty mix. Given the technology, foreign students could attend classes from their home countries virtually, has been the case world over. But interestingly, in addition, new visiting professors were appointed, more so than had been perceived to have been possible pre-COVID, because of the school's limited finances. Virtual visiting professors, that is. As a result, courses with increased international content benefiting from the wider experience of these virtual visiting professors are being provided. So with such innovations in mind, what it means to be international is being reassessed by EFMD, and there's a renewed focus being placed on the very nature of what it means to be a digital university. So let me finish though with some other remarks to balance things out a little bit. I've focused on the emergent benefits. In order to provide a more balanced view, let me turn to the issue of students and faculty members' well-being during periods of physical isolation. Thank goodness we now have the technology to keep us connected. What we've been able to do without it doesn't bear thinking about, does it? Having said that, I would argue in readily embracing the digital, we need not to dismiss the social. In my academic career, I continue to view IT as a socio-technical phenomenon. Excuse me, not purely technical. It pains me to see a generation of students who've had very limited opportunity to enjoy what we term university life, the social, sporting, cultural events we'd come to take for granted. And while the technology has doubtless reduced the pain of isolation, our rush to the digital has its consequences. The benefits of social interaction can't be underestimated, not just in relation to mental health, but also concerning the broadening of the mind. Informal interactions with fellow students on other programs, with faculty from other disciplines, is an essential feature of higher education, and to my mind requires protection. So to sum up, I'll just be very quick. Such major disruptions as COVID can bring about positive transformations, some of which are emergent and unforeseen. But there are attendant threats and unintended consequences that also require our attention. Leadership, forethought, continued attention are required to achieve the benefits and to nullify the disbenefits. The astute efforts of universities have helped us to ensure not just the continued provision of programs on the back of the technology, but also their continued development. This has led to a renewed interest in the understanding of the impact of digital technologies in various aspects of business and management. The content of programs has changed as a result. What it means to be international is being reassessed, and there's renewed focus on what constitutes a digital university. Ensuring the well-being of students remains a key concern. In a nutshell, while acclaiming the advances being made in digital technologies and the possibilities they open up for continued learning, the future of higher education in the digital age requires an appreciation of socio-technical systems and what I would call transdisciplinarity. Harnessing the technical while fostering the social is the way forward, in my view. So I'll stop there. Thanks very much.
So thank you, Dr. Robert. You have, in fact, talk about, very, very important and salient directions of this industry and the impact of digital technologies, the digitalization. And one of the very important things which you have mentioned about the digital university is not only delivery, but the content. And you have touched upon vividly on the social aspect. I'll come back to you on this social aspect. We will like to learn something more from you about this. And now I like to turn my attention to our esteemed panelist, Dr. Devendra. Devendra Kodwani, sir. Sir, you have been in the Open University. You started, I will say, the Open University. Your career, I don't know. I'm sure that you must be the first runner of the Open Universities. And now we are talking about the digital universities now. Sometime back, when we used to enroll, some of us used to enroll for Open University, and the distance learning, we used to do this. We used to earn the distance learning, degrees. It was said, we are doing, just like that. We are today talking about the digital, the way we are learning from digital way. The way, what you see the change now. What do you see the change of that age, and then how you can transform this change to the positive outcomes, like today open university infrastructure is already existing worldwide and in our country. Now how we can transform this open university infrastructure to a digital university, what Dr. Robert is trying to explain to us.
Thank you, Professor Agrawal, and I would like to thank IMA to bring Bob and me face to face. Almost exactly after 3 years, Bob, we met in Milan in March of 2019. And as we came back, we hit the COVID. So, and we were discussing at that time digitalization of management education, of which I had the privilege of being a task force member. So it's so interesting that in 3 years' time, we're coming together on this platform virtually. I think, Professor Agrawal, I think how we could transform is we have a basic infrastructure in India about open education. We have Indira Gandhi Open University. We have many state open universities. And they have been doing tremendous job. I mean, Indira Gandhi Open University probably has the largest number of students any university has, probably one after Chinese universities, 4 million plus students. So I think we are at the cusp of transformation. When Indira Gandhi Open University was set up in '85, inspired by the UK Open University, where I have a very great honor and privilege to work currently, the digital technologies had not evolved so much. Today they have. And along with technologies, there have been changes to the way students engage with learning. So that means it offers us an opportunity as well as it presents a challenge as educators. So I think to explain the whole thing in maybe very quick 5 minutes or so, I would share with you one slide where I tried to outline an ecosystem that might help us benefit most from this. So let us see if this works. Can you see a slide called Future of Education? Okay. So I think this is the slide I wanted to share. Can you see the full slide?
You can make it full screen.
Yeah.
Full screen button is just, this is the button. Yeah.
Okay. So, if we want to really benefit for India, I want to put this in perspective of India. We are nearly 1.4 billion population country. 28 years is the median age, which means we are looking at potential learning community who are eligible for high quality learning of nearly 700 million young people. Now, if we had to really benefit from the so-called demographic benefit in 21st century and lead Indian population to new heights in economic, social, and other well-being measures, education is absolutely essential. Opportunities for high quality education are essential. Also, I would like to call out, because as Bob said, OU was almost a rebellious idea of leveling up education to extend education to those places where either people did not get chance or they had no means to reach. I think it is equally true for India today, given our economic GDP and so on per capita. And about 2.2% of Indian population has one or other kind of disability. 2.2% of Indian population may translate to nearly 30 million people. And I'm very passionate about those people getting chance to make something of life through education. So even that message, I would like to pass on, that digital education can offer solutions to some of those things. So what is that ecosystem that I'm talking about? Well, I think first is content, as Bob very insightfully mentioned. But from that, I would jump straight away to the leadership. Without having visionary leaders who understand the importance of access to education and what it takes to make it successful access, you need leaders. And conventional models that we offer through campus-based teaching will not work there. We need to think very creatively about it. And that is possible by having what I call other human capabilities, which are instructional design. And of course, all of them had to have academic credentials and professional capability. I just got the glimpse of the last presentation before this session. That is what I mean by professional instructional design, technical capabilities alongside the pedagogic capabilities. And this will require a lot of research as well. So we will need multiple centers for excellence in educational technology and research for the digital technology enabled universities. And quality assurance is another aspect which needs to evolve. Now, we have tried to impose the same type of quality assurance processes on digital education as we apply to campus-based, which needs to evolve so creatively without compromising the academic integrity of the offer, which guardians of quality, for example, in management education like EFMD would not tolerate if we were to compromise on the quality, for example. I am proud to say we are a triple accredited business school, including from AFMD, and that only helps us to keep us on toes to make sure that the student experience does not suffer. And the final point I would make is the student success here is a massive challenge in digital universities or higher education enabled through digital technologies. So I'll give three specific measures that concern anyone who is offering online digital education. One is the retention of students in the system. Second is the completion of studies. And third is realizing those learning outcomes that are expected from a qualification or a module. Now, these are not easy things to manage in online education, digital education. Hence, this idea of having suitable professional staff and instructional design who can learn from the analytics and research that can then help instructors to design the materials in such manner that students really benefit from it. The challenge that Bob has presented is not to be underestimated, that how do you ensure the social experience for the student? One needs to evolve some methods of it. We have residential schools, for example, for our MBA program, but these are some of the things that will remain tricky. And finally, on the EdTech, I must say, India is blessed in terms of the talent pool because we have fantastic gamification industry in South India who can really adapt their skills for the education delivery. So gamification, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality are the key strengths that India can leverage to lead the digital higher education, but it will all require a holistic perspective, not episodic or just put a platform and start delivering video talks. That's not what is digital education. Hence, I always emphasize you need an ecosystem and investment in it for long term rather than look for a short term solution to this. I think I'll stop here and then probably have more conversation.
So, Dr. Devendra, it's very nice to hear your what are the key points. As Dr. Robert has mentioned about the leadership, you also mentioned about the leadership. And then you anticipated the need for center of excellence. Center of excellence. Basically the content creation require a different kind of art, which you mentioned, and Dr. Robert also mentioned about that. And here, you mentioned about the help of analytics, which gave us that, the experience, and the feedback. We always in the digitalization we have a feedback loop, kind of thing, and where the analytics will help us to know that what is to be done properly, or what is best for this sort of program or course. And then very abruptly, you have sum up that it requires a different ecosystem. And there is the challenge, the ecosystem. And I think the industry is still learning that about this phase of ecosystem, which we have seen in other industries like retail, Amazon has done, Alibaba has done, and in media industry, which was the ecosystem they have changed with the help of technology. Probably that is one of the lever. We have to still wait for that. Now with this inputs, now I will like to turn to a foremost our panelist. After reading his profile, I say that I'm meeting another technorate today. So Mr. Mahesh, Mr. Mahesh, my apology, Mr. Maneesh, welcome. As we know that for digital transformation, there are two pillars, 2 points, which we always keep insisting in our classes, digital development of digital capabilities, and development of leadership capabilities. Now, both panelists has talked about that leadership capabilities, and you are sitting on the very hot technology. GitHub, I know I'm not expert on this, but I know kind of and you have already worked in this some other technology giants. What do you feel that in terms of digital capabilities, which may be in the domain of customer experience, that is student experience and teacher experience, and the domain of operation efficiencies, which is in terms of administration, say in the universities, and the reach of the universities to across the section of the people beyond the students, those who wants to learn from that university ecosystem. And then, very important that the model change, business model change, how the technologies, you feel as a you like to mention as a you like to share your insight about as a lever for these changes.
Thank you, Professor Agrawal, and hello to Professor Dr. Galliers and Dr. Kodwani. It's great to be in this panel. And as you said, Professor Agrawal, I come here as a technologist, but I also come here as a learner myself, leveraging digital platforms and, continuously gaining more skills, but also as an edtech entrepreneur. In the past, over the last 10 years, I've been working with colleges and universities and helping them understand what digital really means. And I think there is one word that you use in your question, which I want to base my talk on, which is experience. Dr. Galliers talked about, digital infrastructure or tech, and then digital content being important. I think the third most important thing is now digital experience. I remember 10 years back when I used to go and talk to professors and deans and VCs on, how they can take their universities or courses online. The first hurdle always was, how do we do it? Not from an infrastructure perspective. How do I get my professors or my teachers or my lecturers to deliver the same experience that I do in class online? While, Dr. Galliers talked about COVID having accelerated this whole process, we all know it. But I think what has happened is we've just taken the offline format into the online world. We've really not thought about, trying to shift the experience. And I think that's where we really need to think about it, because, the theme of this panel and this conference is disruption. And disruption is not really coming from technology. In my view, the disruption is coming from the demand side, the individuals who want to learn. Because there's a sea change happening in society and in industry as well. If you look at the kind of skills that individuals need today, they were not being taught 10, 20 years ago. Right? So stuff like design, stuff like digital, stuff like geo-environmental engineering. So a lot of these new skills are coming up, which is asking for new roles in the industry as well. And I think that's where, trying to stitch together digital experiences, not just from a regular delivery perspective, but also pulling in industry. And you talked about that in your opening talk, where participation of the ecosystem is very important. And I think that's where digital universities can leverage infrastructure to really cater to this demand. For example, what Dr. Galliers talked about, that South American university, it's not only about getting a professor or students to come. You can also get experts from the industry to participate. I think one of the important disruption that is happening in the industry today is this whole concept of remote work. So as you see that companies are starting to hire people remotely. And what that means is, from an experience perspective for the learner, they can also get experience while learning from a university in working with industry too. So in the past, if I had to do an internship, for example, I would have to travel to a different city that was offering the internship. But now I can do it online. So in the ecosystem, Professor, if you see all the stakeholders like the teacher, the university, the student, the industry, I think the digital university concept is really a beautiful way of pulling all of this together. In the physical world, there were lots of friction points and inefficiencies. Bringing an expert speaker, there was logistics involved. Now there's a way to do it using digital. But the most important thing is the digital delivery experience needs to be enhanced. The instructional design that the panelists also talked about is very important. You can't have regular videos being played. And I also attended the previous session where there were those new experiences of the metaverse and digital verse where you can learn better. Because if people are remote, in the past, once you ship them, physical books in an open university or physical format, they're reading it. But now the videos, the course content has to be engaging. So I think I would stress a lot on the experience piece because that is very, very important. And last point that I wanted to make, and this goes back to Dr. Galliers talking about the social element of universities. I remember, when I did my MBA, and if I ask a lot of my students, my colleagues and friends, what is the one thing that we took away from all of our college experience? And we always answer the network. Learning is great, but the networks that we build, the connections that we build, which we leverage in our professional world, is very important. So I think building this digital experience and how can we connect people, what does hybrid really mean? Because there is no way any digital university can be 100% online. It is bound to fail. It has to have a hybrid element. How that is created, how the instructional design comes in from a course perspective and how people come together. I think that is the true future of digital universities.
Okay. I think, Mr. Maneesh, you have to talk, very, very appropriate, at this juncture that the digital experience, and when I look back that, digital experience is not a digital experience of students, it is across entire ecosystem of university. It is experience of teachers, it's experience of administration, it is experience of other eco partners. So it is very important thing, where the success of digital university has to achieve. One is aspect, which Dr. Devendra has touched about, the open university concept, which can be leveraged. And as we are seeing that is very successful. And globally, many universities are there, and edutech platforms have already demonstrated their capabilities. That you can now, in fact, some of the edutech environment and platforms start providing degrees also of the very reputed universities like Stanford's and all those. I think this movement will keep increasing. So at this point, I like to have a very brief discussion from these panelists, and which keep bothering me sometime before I move to Dr. Robert. You see that there is a exponential growth of these edutech platforms like Coursera and Udemy and Udacity and all those kind of things. And now it has provided a great opportunity for all of us to share our learning and provide the courses. But a university system always require some sort of calibration, some sort of assessment, some sort of certification. Which in our country we do accreditation of the universities, and the grading of the universities, and we don't know who is the. So okay, sometimes the names, big universities' names are attached over there, but nobody has evaluated those programs. Sometimes the novice, learners, students, and some maybe paying for those programs which are not worth. So what should be a mechanism which government or no regulatory body should apply over here?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. I mean, I think there is, I don't know if, I think these external reviews of institutions and programs are important. Now, you would expect me to say that, wouldn't you? With my role as a senior advisor for EFMD, but I over my experience of, well, goodness me, over the last 20 years or so with EQUIS, EFMD accredited programs, AACSB, etc., and both as a provost and as a dean of a business school. While at one level, going through accreditations takes a lot of effort, but if it's just simply seen as an audit, I think you're missing something. If I can use EQUIS as an example, I don't know if this is answering the question. I'm not answering it in relation to what governments might do, but in terms of what we as a community might do. EQUIS stands for the European Quality Improvement System. And Maneesh, I think you said we're all learners. And the more that we can share our experiences in terms of attempting to improve our understanding, share our experiences. Experience is an important element, as has been said, but the sharing of those experiences. I've learned so much from my involvement in peer review teams from colleagues in other institutions. You know, they're doing things a slightly different way. They've attempted something which may or may not have worked, but here's the learning from those experiences. I think those are quite important to me. So I'm sort of focusing on us. I think if I can pick up on another point, if I may, just very, very quickly. Devendra was mentioning being a much more holistic approach. We've talked about ecosystems. We've talked about the different stakeholders, not just within the academic community, but with industry. The more that we can break down and utilize the technology to break down those bridges or build those bridges rather, I think the more that we learn from this, this is a fairly trite comment, so forgive me. What's always worried about the IT industry generally is we tend to talk about solutions. We actually don't ask the questions. You know, it's a solution to what? And the more that we share our experiences, we can understand the multifaceted nature of what is required, so that the technology, while really powerful, or the technologies rather, while being really powerful, how we use that to benefit, how we develop our programs and courses, how we develop the experience of our students for future work. These are the crucial things in my mind. I'm not certain if I've answered the question, but that's what's occurred to me from the discussion.
So, now we want to open. Thank you very much, Dr. Robert. No, I think I knew that it's a very, very difficult position, but some other time, maybe later the industry has to also think about that. And always these sort of things, come at the later stage, not in the, right now we should allow it to proliferate and, to grow, just like, as a wildfire that, the knowledge is available now, is the global knowledge. So now I want to open this panel for any question from the participants. Otherwise, we will have one more round of discussion. Any participants, you can raise the hand and you can ask some question. You are writing something on the on the chat box, can you raise your hand and ask the question?
There are some questions which have come into the chat as well.
Yeah, I was also trying to comment. So if no more questions from the audience, then I'd like to have one more round of discussion. Dr. Robert, you have touched, very important aspect of social aspect. And we consumer of technology knows about that. Technology is sometimes weak on this aspect. And no matter that social media is technology for social connections, interactions, cordial connection. But on the other side, this technology is also very damaging. It may spoil the relations and whatnot. We all know about that. Now, in context of the education, when we are having this sort of very forceful technologies like AI and AR, VR, what will be the social impact of these technologies? In terms of student trust, sometimes they may misuse also that. What may be the repercussions of these technologies? Which is just starting in this domain, which we are seeing the use of like bots started using, robots also I have seen in some of the places, like that.
Yeah, I don't want to the discussion, but just a couple of comments, and then perhaps like colleagues can respond as well. Again, our use of these social media, that comes with a lot of responsibility, doesn't it? And unfortunately, there's been some irresponsible use of those technologies, and I think there is the sort of self-disciplining the providers of those technologies in terms of taking down misinformation and so on, but also control of how we use that technology. I mean, again, the social side in terms of what was mentioned, the MBA program and the building of networks, that can be achieved through the appropriate use of the technologies. And one can build up relationships and then potentially meet physically colleagues from all over the world as a result of our ability to travel. But have those conversations, for example, utilizing this technology, Zoom. It's not the same as being physically close to a colleague and having an informal interaction, but it's better than nothing. But it does require responsibility on the part of the users and on the part of the providers. And I think that's an element of our experience, coming back to that point, that we now recognize that much more than we did, a decade ago, let's say. That's just a very brief answer. I don't know if that helps.
If I can just add on top of it. I think, I agree with what you said, Dr. Galliers, and I can just add one perspective. I think social and digital interaction is now a life skill. Whether we do it in the education ecosystem or not, you have to do it in the outside world, whether you're in the social world or in the job market, right? You have to interact in the digital world. I think this is it's a good point for us to bring that teaching into the classroom. Because I remember when I was a student back in school, we used to be taught how to write letters, right? If you're going to be, when do you use yours sincerely? When do you use yours faithfully? We were taught how to do business communications and formal communications. It was a life skill. Similarly, I think in the digital world, for people to interact in digital, this life skill needs to be taught. Whether it's taught in college or the primary education, I leave that to the academic world, but I think it needs to be taken up.
Yeah, very good. Dr. Devendra, you have talked about the center of excellence, and this is a very important, aspect, which requires a strengthening, if universities wants to take up as a digital route, really like to further, elaborate some of your experience, on this subject, how the universities should use this opportunity of setting of center of excellence, what the center of excellence should do, what kind of work they should do. So what should be their objective?
Yeah, I think I'll start with what is obvious objective just mentioned. So what I imagine is the importance of a serious academic effort, like academic research on various dimensions on the spectrum of digital learning experience. And the one that Maneesh now mentioned, for example, there is need to understand how students engage as a learning community, not with just materials that are offered, but also with one another. And it may start with as simple as, online etiquette. Now, we need to understand the importance of this, because this goes back to the very serious issues of what we call child development, educational psychology. We know the impact of bullying in face-to-face classrooms when one is growing in childhood, or even in teenage or adolescence. Now, if you are subject to bullying or harassment or discriminatory behavior, it has direct impact on your ability to learn and cognitive development. So one would need to understand. I have colleagues here actually in the Open University Law School who have been studying the online bullying for women, and what impact it is having in the social and economic world. So centers of excellence will need to have very wide-ranging remit. You will need to have people from educational psychology, educational technology, anthropologists, educational research, pedagogic research, and they will have to do research. So on how does a span of attention that we have reduced the span of attention among the young people affect how you deliver in 30 minutes, 40-minute learning chunk. For example, what is bite-sized learning? What is the right? So within the classroom, we are used to 45-minute lecture. Or if you are teaching an MBA, we are used to 70-minute kind of a case discussion. What is appropriate learning chunk and how you engage? So we had done a lot of research on learning activities. Now, instructional design, for example, requires that you can't just put a PDF file and video talk and say this is a digital experience. Actually, we know there are at least 8 different learning activities that have effective correlation based on research with the learning outcomes. So, for example, if I give somebody material to read, we call it assimilative learning. Or if I tell somebody listen or watch this video, it is just assimilative learning. There's a collaborative learning. There's a communication. There is interactive learning. There is information skills related, manipulating information. So there are many learning activities one has to study in Indian context. What do they mean? How do you design that works on the Indian? We are taught the biggest thing that if I were doing something on online education in India, I will ask this question, that I'm receiving these students in higher education who have been taught how to write good exam questions. Until higher secondary, we teach students to pass exams and get high marks. And therefore, they spend less time in the school and reflecting on learning, more time in the coaching classes. Now, if I'm going to have those students coming into online learning, digital learning, where it is a lot more student-centric learning, it is expect students to explore all kinds of learning activities. I really will need to help them in the first semester or first course how to be effective digital learner. And you would need research in those areas. So centers of excellence in teaching research would need to do some kind of research on that. And final point about that, although there are many aspects of it, staff development. Without high quality staff development, you cannot have not just digital, but any university, be that face-to-face or online. So it will require significant investment in the staff time and development of those people.
Thank you. Maneesh, I want to ask before we come to the last question, I want to ask you, for digital universities, the technology providers, Microsoft, IBM, your company is having, some responsibilities. So how you like to leverage this responsibility? There's an opportunity over here. There is an opportunity for this industry and the opportunity is waiting. I know that some of the initiative what Microsoft has done or IBM has done. Now I'm not aware of full initiative of GitHub, but I'm talking this question in general that and this sort of ecosystem is required now. That that technology provider should now also anchor this responsibility of developing this sort of ecosystem of digital universities.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And there are two aspects to this. One is the technology itself, which all the tech companies are building. So I will not talk about it. It's already been done. I think the second point is the industry connect that I keep, bringing back into my conversation. Given everything is now digital, given that everything is remote, I think there's an opportunity for all industry, not just tech companies, to interact with colleges and provide an opportunity to students to get internships. Because I think I really, really believe internships while learning is the best way to understand what skills are required in the market and what you can learn. And it also acts as a feedback loop to the university that, hey, what do industry want? So I think, building this connect, that is the most important part. Dr. Galliers also talked about the industry and the government being connected. I know that the government in India is talking about internships and credits. That now needs to be taken up by the industry to embrace it and then, take students. I saw one question from the audience talking about, people who only do online education, how do they get employment? I think this is the perfect example of how that question can be answered. The internship being provided by industry to digitally equip students who are learning online.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now. We had discussed this with the eminent panel. Very very important points. And in last 45-50 minutes. And I think lot of emerging trends and the kind of now requirements are fusing. And the industry wants to move in this direction. Education industry wants what they should do that. So now to sum up this, I would like to now invite each of the panelists to say their last advice to this ecosystem or the whosoever the stakeholders they want to build up the university, digital university kind of thing. So I will start with Dr. Robert. Yeah.
Okay.
Advice.
I found this discussion very very interesting, and I think what I've learned from it is two things in particular. One is the need for wider interaction across disciplines within higher institutions of higher education. Devendra, you mentioned research centres, for example, but very, using my terminology again, transdisciplinarity. So this holistic perspective is really cool. It's not just about the technology. This is very important. It has to be understood and applied, and we develop our experience from its use. But from different perspectives, we're learning from, hopefully learning from those experiences. So that's one aspect. I think, Maneesh, your comment about experience and links with industry really reinforced in my mind the opportunities that can emerge in terms of internships and so on, and employment prospects being improved as a result of that, which was one of the questions raised by the audience. I think universities have learned actually about shifting the experience. I mean, just even learning about what's appropriate in terms of group discussions virtually. It may not be a formal program, but that experience as a teacher, one can be saying, perhaps you shouldn't be saying those things in a virtual group. You might need to be understanding, again, of different cultures and so on in a mixed group from different parts of the world. That's learning experience that is very beneficial, I think. I'll stop there because I've spoken far too much, but I think those are two things that I picked up.
Yeah. So, Dr. Devendra.
Thank you, Professor Agrawal. I would say that this is a real opportunity for India. We are a large country, vast country, and the learning that is needed for leading India and through that world in sustainable development, in responsible management practices, in responsible education, as a biggest democracy, I don't see any better opportunity than making a difference to the world through education. So for that to materialize, we need to take this seriously, a long-term view of situation, a real opportunity for collaboration between industry, government, and social institutions. India, it starts with a tremendous platform. English is very good. Technology capability is next to nobody. It's the best thing. So opportunity to make difference to literally millions in India, but through that to the world well-being. And for that to happen, we need to take a long-term view, a collaborative approach, and keep it student-centric rather than institution-centric approach. We can make a big difference to the world through education. And I would like, and other thing in the context of socio-economic diversity in India, even religious diversity in India. This is a true leveler. We can really break all those barriers for all communities in India, because you don't have to worry about reservations. You can give access to whoever wants. Scale can be, scale will be the kind of a savior for quality education in India. So cost could be affordable for the scale we are talking about. So I'll stop with that, but briefly, I'll quite perhaps inappropriately, Bob mentioned about the Open University in very, very kind remarks in the beginning. I delivered a lecture in 2019 about future of education for the Open University. That's available on the YouTube. I'll just put that link in the chat box. And I reflected on a very long-term view of global demographic patterns. So anybody who's interested can listen to that.
Oh, soon. So, Mr. Maneesh, now the final words from your side. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I echo my co-panelists' views. Totally agree. And I think for a country as diverse as India, digital delivery, length and breadth of the country is just fantastic. But at the same time, I would say that we're still in the present continuous. We're all learning as learners, as digital universities and industries. To get to the future perfect, the present continuous evaluations, experimentations will continue to get to a state where 5 years down the line, we can say, this is how digital universities across the board, across the world can use as a template to apply.
Yeah. Like I will say that on a lighter note that as India has given a lead in case of software industry, software service industry, I think the days are not very far. Considering that the demographies and the numbers which India own today, digital university is the way that we can reach the masses for the education. It is very difficult. The kind of the demographies we are having, multilinguistic kind of realities are there in our country. It is very difficult to reach through a organized way. Now, the disruption is creating the opportunity to reach to the masses. It is not only a question of providing the degrees. It is a question of providing the education and learning. And that. Thank you very much to all panelists. I think I don't have time to sum up the discussion, and it was a great learning for me. I'm sure that whosoever watching this discussion, they must have also learned quite a bit rich areas, valuable inputs which your panelists has shared. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, Aima, for arranging this sort of discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It's good to see you again, Devendra.
Good to see you, Bob. Thank you.